Hey, this is Eli, and this time we are going to create this 3D drawer. It is kind of a crossover between user interface design and 3D design, so that's an interesting combination. But instead of making it in Photoshop, for example, we are going to make this entirely in Cinema 4D. So let's get started. The first thing we can create is the button on its own, or the cover of the drawer. So we can do that with a rectangle spline. So let's create that. And we're going to resize this just a bit. I have the specific values noted down here next to me. That's because I know what worked out in my example. So let's go with that. That's 390 centimeters on both axes. And we're also going to enable the rounding on this one. But let's go with something smaller than 50 centimeters. So let's go with 45. Okay. Now we just have the rectangle. We want a full shape, something three-dimensional. So we are going to extrude this. So with the rectangle still selected, let's go up here and add the extrude object. You may want to do this while holding Alt on the keyboard, so it is the parent of the rectangle. So that is easy. Let's go to the Object tab, and the 20 centimeters extrusion is just fine for now. So we can go back to the Caps tab, and we're going to add a fillet cap on the first one. So that's the front. Let's adjust these settings. So we want more steps, which means that it is smoother. So let's go with 5, that's usually just fine. And we're going to make the radius just a bit smaller, something like 3 centimeters. So you can see this gives us this nice highlight depending on the lighting. So that is the button. Now let's create the surroundings of it. So an easy way to do this is just duplicating the rectangle. So I'm just going to copy and paste it outside of the extrude object. And I'm going to increase the size just a bit. So let's go with 405, for example. So you can see at the front view, that's just that bit bigger. But you can also notice the rounding at the corners is not exactly as it should be. It's a bit thicker than it is at the top and at the sides. So that's just how it works when rounding things with larger objects. So we still have the default rounding of the smaller rectangle. So let's increase it to 50 centimeters. That way we have a nice rounding that is equal in thickness. Okay, so that is the shape that will represent the hole that is holding the drawer. Now we need something that will be surrounding the drawer. So we're going to just copy and paste this rectangle once more. And we're going to make this very large, something like maybe 3000 centimeters will do. It doesn't even need the rounding. And we are going to select both of these. And let's go to this spline menu. And we can select spline or. This will cut out the center spline. And we only have the surroundings around it. So let's drag this in an extrude object again. So you can hold Alt again while clicking on it. And let's make this one a bit deeper. Something like 300 centimeters will do. And I'm also going to the caps options and add that fillet cap with the same settings on this one as well. So we have a bit of rounding on this edge as well. Okay, so that are the two basic parts already. So I'm going to label this and I'm going to hide the wall. Now we can continue with the drawer. So we're going to add a cube object, which will represent the drawer. Let's resize this to something like 300 by 320 by 490. So that's the depth. Let's move it back here. We are going to make this editable by pressing C on the keyboard. Let's go in the polygon mode and select the top one so we can get rid of it. So press delete. And now we're going to select all of these by pressing Command and A. Or just manually selecting them if you want to. And we're going to make some extrusions on this as well to get some thickness. We're not going to do this with the extrude object because we have a full shape already. So we're just going to right click and select the extrude tool. Make sure you select the create caps option. And we're just going to click and drag on the screen so we get a bit of thickness. Okay, this will do. Let's also go to the edge mode while we are at it. And we're going to use the loop selection tool by pressing U and L on the keyboard. Let's select this inner ring and also the outer ring while holding Shift. And we're going to the bevel tool this time. So we want more subdivisions, so it is a bit smoother. Let's go with the default 5 I like again. But we don't want it to be that curved, so we don't want an offset of 10 centimeters. Let's go with something like 3 centimeters. Okay. That gives us this shiny effect if some lighting will get to it. So that's the drawer. I'm also going to add some more details at the front of this panel here. So I'm just going to duplicate it to this side, You can do that while holding Ctrl or Command on the keyboard and moving it to the side, or you can just copy and paste. I'm going to remove the fillet cap and just make it a regular cap on this side. And I'm going to make the fillet cap on the other side. So let's go with 5 steps again on 3 centimeters. And I'm going to move it back so it is connected with the front one. This one will hold a different material, so that's why we are adding it right now. Okay, one more thing we need to add inside of here are the contents. So let's make some kind of thing that represents paper. We're going to do this with a rounded rectangle again. So let's make this rectangle about 288 centimeters on both sides. And I'm also going to add some rounding on this, maybe 45 again. Let's move it here so we can see it. And you have to double check if your drawer is big enough. So you can either resize the rectangle to be a bit smaller, or you can scale up the drawer. Okay, that's good. Let's turn this rectangle into a full shape with the extrude object again. For this one, we are going to make this not as thick. So let's just go with 4 centimeters, for example. And we're going to add some fillet caps on both sides for this. Just one step will do, and make it a bit smaller, something like 2 centimeters. Okay, so that is one piece of paper. Now we want multiple ones of these, of course. So we are going to put this in a cloner object. So with the extrude object still selected, let's go up here and add the cloner while holding Alt again, so it is the parent of the extrusion, like this. We want to change the count of this to something like 4. I want 4 pieces. And I don't want it to move upwards 50 centimeters every step. So that's the Y value. Let's reset that to 0 centimeters. I just want it to move towards the back. Let's go with 40 centimeters. So every paper is being moved equally. Let's move this to the front a bit more. And I think that is just fine for now. I'm going to group this all together, but I want it to be centered to the front of this drawer. So I'm not just going to select everything and press Alt and G, which is also grouping it, but that will center it to everything all together. I want it to be centered to the front. So let's create a null on its own. That way we are sure it is centered here. And we're just going to drag in everything except for the wall. So this is the drawer. Let's also unhide the wall to see how this looks. So if we move the whole group, we get this effect where the drawer is getting outside of the wall. Also, you can still see through the wall at this side. So let's undo this. And I'm just going to add a back panel right here, so we have darkness behind the wall. We can simply do that with a plane object, for example, with a Z orientation. Let's move it back here and make it a bit bigger to be sure. Okay, so that are the basic components. Now we can already start adding some materials to this, so it is a bit easier to see what the lighting will do with those materials. So let's create the first one, which will be for the main stuff. So that's the wall and the cover. So we are going to give this a dark gray color with a touch of blue in it. We could also play around with the reflectance on this, but it should be fine by default. So let's drag this on the wall and also on the cover. And let's continue with the second material, which will be for that second rectangle we created behind the cover. So this will be a blue shiny color, for example. You can pick whatever color you like, of course, but I'm sticking with the blue theme. So this is a bit of a bright blue, but we're also going to add a similar one on the luminance. So you can actually right click on color, copy. Let's go to luminance and paste it right here. And I'm also going to add a bit of transparency to this with the refraction preset of plexiglass. That gives us a different look, but you can still see it is looking glass-like. There's no color anywhere, so we're going to change this to additive. That way you should get some color back. You can also decrease the intensity of the luminance a bit if you want to. That makes it a bit more blue again. Okay, so I'm going to hide the wall again so we can see the drawer. Let's add it on here. And let's continue with a material for the drawer on its own. So something metal-like. I'm going to add a texture on this. So let's add a surface, which will be metal. By default it is blue for some reason, I don't know why. So let's go from a darker gray to a very bright gray. Like this. I'm also going to copy this texture and add it in the bump channel. Let's also make this a bit stronger, something like 50%. And I'm also going to add a Backman layer in the reflectance tab. So let's add Backman. Let's decrease the mix strength to 50% right here at the top. And I'm going to make this a bit rougher, but also less reflective. And the rest should be fine by default. Okay, let's drag this on top of there. Let's continue with one more material for the paper. You could use anything, of course, but I wanted to make it a bit more special. So let's stick with the default white color. It's actually kind of gray. Let's go and add some luminance to this. We're just going to decrease the intensity to 20%. That way it is brighter, but we still have the shadowing on it. We're also going to add a texture on this, which will be a Fresnel. Let's go inside of it by clicking on the thumbnail. Right click on the gradient so we can invert the gradient. We want it to go from white to black. You can see it changes the look up here. And we're also going to make the mix strength of this one a lot smaller, something like 20% again. That makes it just a bit shiny and bright colored instead of just plain gray. Let's also go to the reflectance tab, and we're going to increase the specular strength to something close to 50%. So that makes it a bit shinier. Let's drag it on the paper. Okay, so that is the basic stuff. Also want to have the material of the wall on the back plate. Now, one more thing I would like to add is something at the front here, because it is very plain right now. You can do that with something three-dimensional if you want to, but you can also just place an icon on top of this. We need to do this with a new material, so let's create that. You can pick out whatever color you like, but I'm going to make this gold, so we don't need any color actually. We're just going to use the reflectance. So let's add a background layer again, so we can create something that will be gold looking. The default settings are just fine, but we're going to change the color of this one. So let's make it something that looks like gold. Okay, so that is good for now, but it is still no icon, so we can do that in the alpha channel. So let's enable that. So I'm just going to load in a PNG file I found on Google, so that it's with a transparent background even, and that should be fine. You don't have to move it to the location of this file. And you can see it is cutting out this shape. If it is cutting the other way around for you, you can also invert the selection. That is easy, but it works fine for mine. One more thing you can also do is copying this texture and going to the bump channel and paste it inside of here with a bit more strength. That gives it a bit more of highlights at the edges. Okay, so let's drag this material on the front cover and see what happens. So it is on top of there, it's a bit big, but you can also notice it is doing some stuff at the sides here, which we don't want. So what we can do now is going to this texture tag at the front, and we're going to change the projection to cubic. That is looking different, but still no fix at the sides, and it is also repeating itself. So let's disable the tiling option. That is much better, but we still have the stuff at the sides. So let's go to the texture mode. Now you have this cube, and we can just move it forward until it doesn't cover the sides anymore. So this will do. And you can also scale down this icon with the scale tool. And there we go. So we have this golden logo, but there's nothing to reflect on top of it, so it will be black for now. So that's a good point to start adding some lights on this. Let's enable the wall again so we can see it again. And I'm also going to move out the drawer so you can see the shadows it will cast when it is moved out. So let's go with something like 300 centimeters to the front or something. Something easy to remember. And let's add a first light. The first light will be an area light. And we're also going to add an area shadow on this. This is the prettiest looking kind of shadow. The default settings are just fine on everything, but we're going to move this in a specific spot. So you can follow along with what I will do at the coordinates at the bottom here. So let's move it backwards, something like 520 centimeters. So that gives us a minus value. Let's also move it up 970 centimeters. So that's all the way at the top here. We don't need to move it towards the side on the X value because we want things to be centered visually. Maybe we can already take a look at the first render, how this looks. So we get a nice highlight at the top and a bit of shadow already happening here, but everything is still too dark so you can't see much of it yet. So to counter that, we are going to make a second light, which will be just an omni light. That's the default one. For this one, we are going to decrease the intensity to 50% because it is not the main light. We're also going to add an area shadow on this. And we're also going to change the color of this one just a tiny bit. So let's make it a bit more blue, like so. And let's reposition this. Let's move it up 500 centimeters, for example. And I'm going to move this back 680 centimeters. So that is just diagonally above the drawer, a bit more backwards and lower than the main light. So let's see what happens now. Now you can see we get a bit more of a softness at the front of the drawer if it is opened, which is what we want, but we don't want it to be as bright as when it is closed. So that is perfect with the combination of these two lights. But it is still very dark at the bottom, so let's place another light that will counter that. This one will be an area light again, but we don't want any shadows on this, we already have enough at the top. We're also going to decrease the intensity of this to something like 35%, because it is also not a main light. And I'm going to make this one a lot more blue. So 20% in blueness. And let's move this one towards the bottom, of course, maybe minus 600 centimeters. And let's also move it backwards 600 centimeters as well. So that gives us these three lights for now. Let's render again so you can see how it looks. Okay, so that's already better. Now we can continue with some other more specific lights. The first thing we can also do is adding some ambient occlusion in the render settings. So let's go to Effect and add ambient occlusion. That was under this button. And I'm also going to add a bit of an ambient light to this, so we get a bit more brightness in the whole scene on its own. You can do that by creating a default light. And let's scroll down all the way to the bottom and select ambient illumination. We don't want it to be too strong, of course, otherwise everything will look flat. So let's just make this 30%. Let's render once more to see how this looks. Okay, I think this looks pretty cool already. One more thing I would like to add is some light at the bottom of the drawer to get a bit more detail and some more color in the scene. Again, this can be a default light. We're also going to add an area shadow on this. And we're going to enable the visible light. So let's go with volumetric on this one. This will give this orb around the light. Let's already move it in position. So I want it to be close to the front and just below the actual drawer. So when the drawer is opening, it will reveal itself, and when we close it, it will be hidden. So that's a nice effect. But right now, the orb is just a bit too big. You can scale it with this handle, or you can go to visibility, and let's change this outer distance to 200 centimeters. That's just enough. One more thing we need to do is changing the color of this light, because we don't want it to be plain white. We want it to be blue. So if you render this right now, you will see we get this nice glowy look around the drawer, but you can also notice the whole wall is getting a bit too blue. So that is not as nice with the contrast with the gray stuff. So what I did is going downwards on the settings here and disabling the diffuse option and also the specular option. And let's see again how this looks. So that is more than enough of a glow. It is a bit of a fake glow. It's not actually reflecting on the wall, but because it is visible, we can still see it like that. Okay, so that is enough for now, but we still need to fix what is going on with this gold icon at the front. It is still black, and that is because there is really nothing to reflect in this scene. It is just pitch black around everything. So we need to add something. The first thing we can do is adding a sky object. You could add any kind of texture on top of that sky, but I'm just going to make it something simple. So just 50% gray, for example. And let's add it on top of there. This will be the main surrounding. That gives us this brightness on this icon, but it will not look shiny because it is equal on every side. So we need something more in this environment that will be reflected on it. You could add any kind of environment you want on it, but what I did is adding a disk object somewhere around the drawer. So let's create this one. We're going to make this a lot larger. Let's go with 2500 centimeters. Let's also move backwards so we can see it. The orientation should be in the Z values, so it is flat with the wall. And I'm going to right click on the disk, go to Cinema 4D tags and add a target tag, so we can target it towards the wall, for example. So just drag the wall inside of the target object field. And now if you move this disk around, you will see it is always pointing towards the center of the wall. So what I did is just playing around with the positioning and the rotation of this disk and seeing how it looks in the render. But I'm going to skip this for you, so you can just follow along with the very specific values I will be adding at the coordinates tab down here. So for the position, let's go with an X value of 1400 centimeters. 540 on the Y value, and minus 2100 on the Z value. That places it right here, but there is also a bit of rotation already happening. What I did is using 35 degrees on the H value, minus 12 on the P value, which is already at the correct position, and we don't need anything on the B value. Apply, and that is it. But it is still a flat disk right now, so let's add a material on this one as well. We can keep the color as it is, but we're going to add a bit of luminance to it. And we're also going to make this not just pure white, that's too simple. Let's break it up a bit with a noise, and we can do that in the alpha channel, for example. So let's go and add noise as a texture here. Let's go inside of it, and we're only going to change the scaling of this. So let's go with 50%. That makes the spots a bit smaller. Okay, let's drag it on top of there. So now if the drawer is opened, it should be bright, and that is a nice effect. Okay, you can hide this disk object if you want to, just in the viewport by double clicking this top dot. That will hide it in the viewport, but it will still render it, so that's fine. Now, before we are going to add the animation to this, we're just going to make sure we have a nice camera position so we can see how it actually looks when animating. So let's create a camera object. We can already look through it. And I'm just going to zero out every value on the positioning and rotation, like this. And now you can just zoom out with this handle at the top of the viewport. I recommend doing it that way so you don't move the camera in any direction except backwards. So I think this will look fine. If you want to make sure the camera will never move, you can right click on it again and go to Cinema 4D tags and select the protection tag. But let's go outside of the camera view for now. You can also hide it if you want to. Okay, so that is all the basic stuff with the modeling, the lighting and the texturing. So let's continue towards the animation. The first thing we need to set up here is how the papers will reveal itself, because now it is just hidden inside of this drawer, so we can't even see it. We're going to do this by selecting this cloner object and adding some effectors to the cloner. So let's go to MoGraph, Effector, and the first one we are going to add is a plane effector. So let's go in the parameter tab, and you can see we already are moving all of them up 100 centimeters. So that should be fine, or we can even increase it to something like 110 centimeters. But we don't want them to be up here if we close the drawer, because it will intersect with the wall. And that's why I'm doing this with a plane effector instead of just moving them up. So let's go to fall off, and we're going to add a linear field. If you're on an older version of Cinema 4D, you will just add a linear fall off. But it is a field in this case, so let's add this. We're going to rotate this 90 degrees, but towards the other side, so that's minus 90 degrees. So that means that everything at the left side of the effector will apply the plane parameters, and everything at the right side will hide it. So let's scroll down here. We don't want it to be that long, so let's go with 70 centimeters, for example. And it should be fine like this. Maybe we can even move it backwards just a bit. So let's go to around the 50 centimeters on this axis. So now let's see what happens if we close the drawer. You can see the paper is lowering, but not enough, so we need to adjust the linear field a bit more towards the front, like that. So that's just enough. Let's try and move the drawer once more. Yeah, so it is nicely hiding itself when closing. The next thing we need to add is another effector. So let's make sure we have the cloner selected again. Let's add a step effector this time. In the effector tab, we can already change this kind of spline. So we're going to make this a linear one to start off with. So spline presets, linear. And let's also right click and flip it horizontally. So we want it to go from the top to the bottom. That way you can see everything happens from this one at the front towards the one in the back. So let's go to the parameters. We actually want a bit of scaling on this one, but a lot smaller and towards the other direction. So let's go with minus 0.16 or 18 or something close to that. That makes it just a bit bigger on every single clone. And we're also going to add a bit of steps in the position on the Y value. So let's go with -47, for example. Actually, I don't want the scaling to happen on this one just yet, so let's disable that. Makes it a bit more visible still. We're going to add a bit of a rotation on this. So we don't want it to happen on the H value and the B value. We just want it to happen on the P value. Let's go with 12 centimeters. That gives us a bit of a more open look, especially when looking inside of the drawer. You will be able to see more of it this way. Now we're going to add a second step effector. We don't want it to be combined. That's a bit too much. So let's select the cloner once more and add a second step effector. That's totally possible. And for this one we want a soft curve, so we have the default one here, but you can even stretch the point like this. We can even adjust this one at the front as well to get this nice curve. Okay, so that's good to go, I guess. Let's go to the parameter tab. For the scaling, let's go with this -0.18 as we set it up. So it's a bit tricky to figure it out if you were just going to do this manually. It's that I have the values that worked for me. Let's also add a bit of a position transformation, so 15 centimeters on the Y value. That raises up the ones at the back so we can see those as well. Now I see that the one at the front here is intersecting with the blue part. So let's just move this backwards a bit. Just a bit more to the front so it is not intersecting with this plane effector. And that should be fine by default. And also one more thing you can already do is adding a delay effector on the cloner. Let's go to the effector tab and we're going to set this to spring and maybe give it 60%. So if we animate this with keyframes now, it will be a bit more bouncy. That's a kind of nice animation detail you can add on it without manually keyframing everything. Okay, so that's all set up. Now we can start animating the drawer. So we're just going to do this on this whole group. What you can also do is changing the layout to animate. That way you should get this timeline at the bottom. What I like to do is going in the F-curves. That's just a bit more easy visually to see what is going on. So make sure you have the drawer selected. And we're going to make a first keyframe at frame 10, for example. So we have a bit of time where nothing is happening. But we also need to make sure the drawer is at the original position. So let's go to the coordinates of this and make sure it is all the way at 0 centimeters. I also notice the light is not inside of the drawer, so let's undo this and make sure we find this light and put it inside of the drawer. Okay, so now we're good to go. Let's reset the position, 0 centimeters, and make a first keyframe by pressing this button. If you can't see it, you have to drag it inside of here. So that's the drawer. Let's open all of the animation aspects. And you can see the lines right here if you click on one of the positions. So nothing is happening just yet. We're going to focus on, let's say, the Z position first. So that's the blue handle, which will open the drawer. So we're fine at 10 frames. Let's move forward something like 5 frames. And we're going to move this inwards a bit. Let's hold Shift so it is in nice round numbers. Let's go with 20 centimeters inwards so we get a pressed look. Let's keyframe again. We're going to move forward just 10 frames to 25, for example. And we're going to move this one all the way back so it is extended. Let's say 280 is just fine, or maybe a bit more. 300, like we made it originally. Let's keyframe again. And you can also move around in this timeline with the same controls as you do in the viewport to scale it and move it. Okay, so that looks like this right now. We're going to move forward just 5 frames to 30. And we're going to move this back even more. Let's say just 20 centimeters. Keyframe again. Move forward 5 frames again. And we're going to return to 20 centimeters. And keyframe once more. So that is a bit of an overshoot. So it goes all the way out, a bit further, and back to the position we wanted. And now we want this animation to be reversed. So you can do that by selecting all these keyframes up here. And I'm just going to copy them by holding Ctrl or Command and moving them to the side. Let's right click and go to Edit and Reverse Sequence. That way you get this symmetrical kind of animation. But I'm going to move these a bit more so it is timed as I want it to. So let's say we have a bit of a pause in the middle. So we have this animation reversing at frame 67, but it doesn't fit in with the 90 frames anymore. But that is fine because we want to adjust the speed of this anyway. It doesn't have to go as slow when closing. So let's delete this overshoot. So we have just this frame. And we're going to move this towards frame 79, for example. Like this. So that's a bit slower actually. But at frame 85, we want it to be reset at 0 centimeters. So that's the last one. So we also don't need to overshoot at this one. And just move it here. So let's play and see how this looks. It's a bit laggy right now because I'm recording, but it should be fine on your side. Okay, so that's the basic setup of the animation. Now we can adjust some stuff so we can see more of the inside of the drawer. It will be a bit fake because this is the real animation, but you can notice you still can't see a lot of the paper right now. So we are going to fake this. A first way to do this is going in the Y values. So actually I'm just going to delete all of these keyframes except for the first one. So we can start over fresh. So the one at frame 10 is just fine. I'm also going to add one at frame, let's say 20. So I'm just going to copy this while holding Control or Command again and moving it while also holding Shift, so it is straight at 0 centimeters. Now at frame 25 I'm going to lower this. Oh, make sure you only have one selected. Let's lower this to minus 102 for example. You can add this value manually by double clicking on the dot. I'm going to move forwards a bit so you can see the animation happening. It can stay all the way like this to frame 67 for example. So I'm going to duplicate this to this side. And at frame 74 maybe, it can already reset towards the 0 position. So that's up too high. Let's enter it manually. And let's see how this looks in the animation. I'm going to take a look at the side to make sure everything is alright. Okay, so that's looking a bit weird right now. We don't want the one at the end to be positioned like this. We want it to happen right before the stuff is going inwards. So let's move this while holding Shift closer to this side. Okay, but it is still very weird, and that is because we want to add one more thing, which is a bit of rotation to this. I did this all together, but I want to split this up into small parts so you can understand what is happening, but I didn't make it like this in the first place. So it was a bit of trial and error. So we're going to rotate this just on the P value. Let's delete the keyframes again. We're going to start at frame 10 once more. Let's select this point and we're going to start rotating somewhere around when it is opening. So that's frame 16. So let's create a second keyframe right here. That's exactly when things will be starting. Now at frame 25, I guess, we can add one more keyframe, which will be at 20 degrees. So that's upwards. That's way too much right now. So let's scale this up as well. And I'm just going to manually add the value like that. So that's a lot of rotation. But at the front view, you will see this is exactly what we need to see inside of the drawer. Okay, let's go to frame 67, I guess it was, where things will go back. So I'm just going to set it up right here and move it accordingly. Let's move forward about 10 frames and lower it all the way back to 0 degrees. So I just need the last one and copy this. Let's make sure this all the way to 0 again. And that should be everything we need. So let's go through the animation again. I think the rotation can happen a bit later, once more. Let's see how this looks in full motion. So that's not perfect yet, because we have a bit of intersection going on. So let's make this rotation happen a bit earlier. But not that early. So that's why you want to use the F-curve, which makes it easy to just move around single keyframes on the rotation on its own or the Z value on its own. So let's go to the Y position. And at every problematic area, you can just make a small adjustment like this. Okay, so this should be good now. Yeah, this is what we want. So let's go back to the startup view and see how this looks if we render it when it is opened. And that's finally looking all fine by now. So now it is just a matter of rendering this out in the picture viewer. So you set up the frame range to preview range, that's all 90 frames of them, and you can set up the save settings as you want it to. If things aren't working out for you as it is in the video, you can also check out the project file, which I will put in the description for free. So anyway, this is all I had to show you guys today. If you come up with a render of your own, I would love to see it, so you can tag me on Instagram or Twitter. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next video.